at Greenville Oaks. If you're a church member, if you're a guest, a friend, family member who's watching, thanks for taking a few minutes with us. We're going to be talking about FOMO today, fear of missing out, and I'll get to that in just a minute. But throughout our time, we want to interact with you. We want to hear your feedback. We want questions. Even if you ask them after we're done on this broadcast, then we'll come back to it. We'll interact with you in the chat below. So feel free to do that at any time. But we are talking about FOMO. That was our focus on Sunday of this week. And a reminder, and I'll remind us of this again at the end of our time, we challenged everyone to take one day this week off of social media, including news apps. Or if you don't spend a lot of time on social media already, then maybe it's something else for you. But take a day off social media and really focus on gratitude and prayer. So I'll mention that to us again at the end, because here at Greenville Oaks, we are in the office. We're going to practice that together tomorrow. So anyway, I'm excited about our guest that's going to be with us today, or who is with us today. He is with us, not going to be with us. Dr. Corey Allan. Corey is a friend of Greenville Oaks. Many of you know him. He's been a friend of mine for a long time, been a mentor to me. He works as a marriage and family therapist. And simplemarriage.net is his website. But he also has a great resource, a weekly show that he does. It's in podcast form right now, but he's going to be doing some other things with it called Sexy Marriage Radio. And so for all of our married couples out there, it's a great resource for you guys. I've enjoyed it the times that I've listened to it, for sure. So let's go ahead and bring Corey in with us and start talking about this crazy thing called FOMO. Hey, Corey, how are you doing?
I am fantastic. Thanks, Greg.
That's great. It's pretty cool. So I've seen you twice today now, once here in the office in person, and now I'm looking at you online. So
it's still in person, though.
That's true. That's one of the great things about technology. I mean, we've talked in this series that technology is not bad. Mm-hmm. It's not good or bad. It just is. And there are a lot of good things that we get from technology. This is one of them. So anyway, but there are some things that have created challenges for us. And so this week we're talking about FOMO, the fear of missing out. Colin did a good job on Sunday of pointing out that this is not new. Right. This is something that's been around for a long time. So just with technology hasn't created it. We've named it because of technology, I guess, a little bit more. I guess it made it into the dictionary now because of technology. 2013 is when Colin said. Somebody needs to fact check him for sure. Anyway,
you're right on that.
I always like to fact check Colin when we can. But anyway, so fear of missing out. How would you define it if someone just said, hey, okay, FOMO, fear of missing out? How would you define that?
Well, I think, if it's been around for a long, long time, there's lots of elements that are involved with this, right? Like the idea of keeping up with the Joneses, a status, where's my value and security, to quote Galen. Yeah. So it just, to me, it's this idea of an unease that comes upon us when I think I don't matter, or I'm missing on what other people could be doing and what the world deems is important that maybe I didn't know was important. And I think with the onset of advertising and commercialism that we have, even before the internet, with TV and radio and everything, that's Madison Avenue's job is fear of missing out, right? Yeah. You have problems that ail you in life, so what you need is a new Volvo, or the latest technology or something, because that will help you feel less abnormal or uneasy.
Yeah, and so many. That's a good point. At one point, I considered going into marketing. Actually,
okay.
It was very brief. It was like one or two classes in college. There were things I enjoyed about it. Right. When you look at it, I mean, the whole point is to try to pull your strings to make you buy or use that product. And social media is probably creates one of the biggest challenges for us in that, because it gives you this idea that you're more connected than you are.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the very platform we're meeting on
Right.
is one of the biggest culprits of this idea of I feel so connected, but now I also feel so uneasy because look at what everybody else is doing. And that's not my life. I don't get to have that kind of an adventure. When I'll let you in on a little secret that's probably not necessarily a secret. They don't really have an adventurous life either. They're just portraying one better on TV.
I appreciate you saying that, because I get caught up in that sometimes where, and I've admitted at the beginning of this series, I admitted that there are times where I'll get on Facebook, and because it's the only social media platform that I'm on, but I'll get on Facebook and I'll think I'm just gonna check it for 2 minutes, and then 30 or 45 minutes later, I'm looking and I'm like, I'm happy for all my friends who are in Cancun and Hawaii and every place else, while I'm here in Allan and it's pouring down rain and it's cold and whatever else it is. So, it is, we portray our best selves, which is natural.
Yes, but the fallout of that, because I don't have at my fingertips, but there's actually a new research I just saw that showed in teenagers and then young adults, too much time on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and those kinds of things leads to an increase in depression. Yeah. And so it's like, okay, hold on. What is that about? And to me, I think the foundation of it is the fear of missing out. It's this, all of a sudden I feel less than. I feel not as important or not as engaged or not as vibrant or not as valued, when before I got on there, like your example, before you got on Facebook 30 minutes later or 30 minutes prior, you probably weren't feeling very unvalued. But when you click the home button to get off, it's like, I don't feel as good. I feel like maybe my life stinks a little more than I thought going in.
Yeah, that's a good point. So that's something I'm going to take away right now, is I'm going to try to pay attention to how I'm feeling when I'm thinking. I don't know. I've never thought about that before, but yeah, you're right. I think because I do it as like I'm just going to check it. I'm bored.
And I think that's to me the premise is, what am I using it for? Yeah. Because if I'm getting on there for a specific, hey, I need to check this. I mean, my life group uses Facebook as its primary means of connection and keeping up with where are we meeting this week and what's the issues, that kind of stuff. It's our point of contact. Yeah. We also have text chains between the men and the women, which is another one, because there's, in my group, far more of the men don't use Facebook as well. And I don't get on there but once a week max. Yeah. And so it's, if I'm getting on there to check something, then get on there to check something. Don't then spend the rest of the time browsing, because you're just wasting time. Because I think that's where all of a sudden you realize you've got an issue that you didn't know you had going in, which there's Madison Avenue and, Wall Street saying, hey, let me present you with a problem you didn't know you had, and now here's the solution for it by buying our product.
Yeah, that's you talk about purpose. One of the things we've been trying to tell people or remind people in this series is that we want to use technology together and for a purpose rather than aimlessly and alone. That comes from the book, The Tech Wise Family, which is a great book. Yep. It's very it's different. I mean, it's a family that took a very radical approach to technology, but yeah, together and for a purpose rather than aimlessly and alone. So thinking about FOMO, as a counselor, what are you seeing as a counselor right now regarding FOMO? I mean, you talked just a minute ago about the research regarding adolescence and increased depression and anxiety. What are you seeing right now?
Well, the biggest, primary clientele I have is couples. So it's married couples. And the biggest thing, that it's not a direct correlation that they think of coming in, but it would seem like it's not a huge leap to think it's going to cause, that FOMO can cause a lot of marital discomfort, because one person, whoever it is that wants the higher quotient of romance or adventure or excitement or eroticism or connection or emotion, whatever it is, if they see what's being portrayed and think that that's real, they're going to feel like what am I missing? What's wrong with my marriage? When in reality, nothing. It's not anything really wrong. It's just they're only seeing part of the picture when you look at things through social media or romance novels or Hollywood or TV shows, anything. It's all portrayed, but we're quicker to recognize it in a movie and recognize that's an illusion. But we don't necessarily attach that same quantifier to social media. That it's askew. It's not a flat out lie, but it's kind of like reality TV. That it's massaged. It's refined a little bit on what I share. That I don't share the real nitty gritty, and so I see it as one person would be. I'm not getting the connections or the adventure or the spark I want, so I've turned to other things, which just further magnifies my disconnect or my discomfort. And that can create a big cycle. And typically then the spouse is going, well, you spend a whole lot of time on social media if you thought that's an issue. And they don't, no, that's not at all. That's how I see my friend, So that's the one thing that jumps out to my mind as far as that's a contributing factor.
Yeah, I like, when I hear fear of missing out, I think most of us we take our mind to like some activity, like, oh, I'm missing out on an event or an activity. Like, oh, I was planning to clean my garage today, but now I see that there's going to be a party at somebody's house, and
Right.
we're going to go over there with all of our friends and hang out and enjoy the day. And so the garage isn't going to get cleaned.
Right.
And it is, but I think a lot of times we don't think we have as much of a problem with it because we don't recognize it in our relationships sometimes.
Yeah.
Even with our kids, as a parent. So I had this experience the last few days. Somebody reached out to me about Madeline playing on a basketball team. Well, she's playing soccer right now. We're super busy. And at first I'm like, yeah, there's no way. But then my mind starts going, well, but if she wants to get better at basketball now, then she's going to need to play basketball. And so I'm starting to research some of this stuff. And, my wife is saying, don't even think about it. Like, just stop.
Right.
And I caught myself because I realized it really has nothing to do with basketball. It really has nothing to do with my relationship with my daughter. It's about FOMO.
Yep.
So FOMO got me in that moment. And so how do we recognize it? Because it can be more subtle than we think.
Well, I think the word that comes to my mind, this isn't necessarily in your situation with the story you just shared, but the word that comes to mind as I'm listening and thinking about this is, where is guilt when I'm dealing with issues? Do I feel guilty like because what comes to my mind is Pam's job as a CPA in tax season. She feels guilty about the amount of time she's away from the house during the crunch times.
Right.
Because I'm missing out on times with my kids, which, okay, yeah, but do we balance it out with other ways? Are you more intentional with the time you have? Because is there a perfect scenario that fits within a finite level of resources that we have with time, energy, money, everything? Probably not.
Yeah.
So we could always feel like, well, I could always do better. I could always do this. Well, okay, I've got to come to grips with the fact that I can only go so far. So how do I see and be intentional about what's the bigger story? What's the bigger picture I'm after? What's that dynamic? So guilt comes to mind. The other thing is just kind of like utilizing the pushback from family members that you care about and have a good relationship with, that are probably going to be quicker to recognize it, like Allison was with you, than you are in yourself.
Sure.
That it could be this, hold on, are you sure? And how do I use that as not you're squashing my joy and keeping our daughter from, playing for UConn eventually. And instead it's, okay, hold on. There's no scholarships available yet. So we're probably okay to miss out because this is a better use of our resources and time.
Yeah. And actually I'm glad you brought that up too, because that's kind of where we started this whole campaign. The first challenge that we put out for people was to sit down and actually talk about our why and talk about what we're for.
Yep.
Opposed to what we're against.
Yep.
So when we start talking about what we're for, and this is getting in a little bit to how can we combat with FOMO
Yep.
or be aware of it, and I want us to move in that direction next. But when you're having conversations with your family, when you're actually talking about these things, and I think there's something also about not just talking about it, but actually writing it down. When I have a list in front of me that says these are the things that are most important to my family, and playing year-round sports, it might be on the list. But
absolutely.
It's not going to be as high as some other things. And so it helps me to kind of prioritize a little bit and look and see, okay, are we spending all our time on this, or are we doing these other things as well too that we say are important to our family?
Yeah.
And so just knowing what we're for and knowing
Absolutely.
kind of having a family vision, I guess. What else? What would be some other ways that we can combat this, FOMO, these feelings that we have to deal with?
Well, I think this is what you guys have already alluded to when you started this, is how do I have a little bit of a social media or just technology break where it's a fast from it, if you go biblical terminology, where I truly do turn it off and I disconnect. And because I think the same philosophy applies of how do I be intentional with what I do with my time. That, because if I have a show that I particularly like, okay, I don't know if that necessarily means I got to stop. It just means just watch that. Don't binge the whole season in one day, and because then I've lost.
That's how you have to do it now, right?
maybe, but it's seeing it as how do I just be intentional about the time I'm investing, knowing there's a cost to it. Because everything has a cost. Everything has a consequence. Yeah. So if I'll see this on just how am I using the time and here's a marker then too. How do I also recognize if I have to limit myself from it? Do I have some uneasiness, feel really like withdrawal symptoms almost? Because if that's the case, then it's a bigger issue. It's an idol. It's pulling you further than maybe you're even allowing to admit. And because I think there's a merit to, all right, I utilize the stuff, just don't be used by the stuff.
Yeah, man, Corey, so many. Have you listened to some of what we've been doing or not?
No,
because so many
I haven't. I'm not familiar with it all. No,
I didn't think so. So many of the things that you're mentioning come back to the things that we've said already. One of the things we've said is we want to put technology in its proper place. We want to learn to use it as a tool, but it's not a good master if we're going to be
right.
slaves to it.
Right.
And so that's good. Another idea that we've talked about here as far as combating FOMO, and then there's one more I want you to talk on a little bit. You alluded to it earlier. Is gratitude. Focusing on what we do have, focusing on what we can be grateful for. And it kind of leads me to the thing that I'd like you to mention is being present. Yeah. And I know Colin's going to talk about this in a couple of weeks, but when I'm always thinking about something that's somewhere else, and that's FOMO.
Yep.
So that is a textbook experience of FOMO.
Right. And that's what's interesting. Going back to the relationship and the length of time you and I have known each other, it was around the time that you were interning at Skillman with me, and the 90s. In the 90s.
In the 90s.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we're not that old, but that's when we were working together. That's when I stopped wearing a watch. Is because I kept noticing every place I kept looking at my watch, preparing for whatever was to come. And it's like, okay, this is ridiculous. It was that whole, how much longer, how much left, how much, and I'm realizing I'm not connected. And that was even before smartphones, where, I just saw research that said Americans average 4 hours a day on their phone, on their smartphone, and they check it over 100 times a day on their smartphone. That's pretty impressive and scary at the same time. So it's learning, how do I see that where I am is what matters? That's that. I don't know if you, the link I sent you to the article was the whole phrase of be where your butt is. And that's a phrase I use with my kids when they get caught up in something, or they sit there and they're on their iPad, but they're right there with us. Or the thing that drives me the most crazy when I see families out to dinner and they're all on technology, or two of them are and one, the others aren't. It's like, wait, you guys are together. Take advantage of the time. None of this is promised. This is all sacred time if you think about it. We don't know what's going to happen. Yeah. So, I'll constantly, hey, Sid, be where your butt is. You're be here now, right? This is where we are. And you can even use that with little kids that, hey, when are we doing that? I was like, no, we're here now. Be here now. And just kind of, those are little things that are also reminders to me to just, when I'm here, be here. If I need to do something, that's fine. Do it. But don't think I can multitask. Because if I multitask, what science has found is you end up doing a lot of tasks not very well.
Right.
So sequential tasking.
Yeah, there's no such thing as multitasking, actually. Right. Your brain can do one thing at a time. Right.
So sequential tasking. Yep. So sequential tasking, meaning I got to get this done. Give me 10 minutes. I'll get this done, and then I'm connecting back with you. And I think as humans, we understand that.
All right. So we have a question from a guy named Colin Packer.
He's trouble.
Yeah, this is trouble. I'm thinking I might want to just let him address this. But the question,
I think this is a good sermon title.
It is. What does pornography addiction and The Bachelor have to do with one another, and how do they connect to FOMO? That's all you, Corey.
Okay, but no. So here's interesting, because in the moms group that I spoke at this morning, we got to talking about pornography, because we're talking about how do you do stuff with your children and how do you walk alongside in the world and the technology that we live in, because it is a real threat. It is a reality of the world we're in. I mean, this is a porn portal, right? All of this is the way we're meeting could be a porn portal. I mean, it's so evident. And so the way it was phrased as the question, it was phrased with, how do we walk with our boys? And I'm like, wait, hold on. We've got to recognize our girls. Pornography is not just a boy thing. Anything that's an illusion could be porn. So even good chick flicks that every girl and even guys like, that has elements of porn. It's just not graphic, but it's creating something that's an illusion. And so I think you get shows like The Bachelor, which are all built on just, well, never mind.
I want to finish that statement.
It's an illusion that's so worldly, but it's just like advertising, that it's playing off of an emotion we as humans have of, I wish I could experience that. I wish I all of that. That's the exact same thing. That's fear of missing out. That's fear of I am not all I thought I was, or I wish I had that kind of stuff. And what we don't realize is life on life terms is it isn't that. It's conversations about laundry if you're dealing with marriage, and it's schedules, and it's not, oh, let's go to this romantic thing and then no, that's not at all that. So I think that there's a correlation. We just don't put it, because pornography has its own connotation in the sense that, that's graphic, that's a betrayal, that's something. Well, there's a lot of softcore porn that don't have pictures. It's all illusion. And so to me, it comes down to, just from the thought of what we're talking about and then steering it to where I was this morning, that if it's something that's playing off of an emotion, I've got to be aware of that and see it as, okay, what's real life? What is this really revealing about me and my walk and my spirit life and everything? And how do I confront that better by being more present, being honest, being upfront, praying, whatever it is, but use it as data, not necessarily guilt.
Yeah, that's good. Because guilt and fear and shame are definitely motivators, and it is used all the time. I mean, that's part of why we experience FOMO through social media and through advertising and other things, but they lead us to a different direction than when we can just be honest with ourselves and say, okay, well, here's, I guess what you were saying, here's why I watch The Bachelor. Here's my need that I'm looking for in watching The Bachelor.
Right. And I think that's the whole point, is how can we be more intentional with, okay, you know what? I'm going to this movie because it's a 2 hours of an escape and entertainment. Okay. Is there anything necessarily wrong with that? Probably not, depending on the movie, because some of it could be, that's a little questionable, but it's still, how do I just be much more engaged? Because I think being a more invested and engaged believer in the kingdom means I'm intentional with what I'm doing. And it could just be, I'm just taking a break and I want to veg in front of a couple of shows, and that's it. You're welcome to veg with me. But as soon as I'm going to sequential task this bad boy, right? I'm just gonna hang out and watch this. And then when this is done, then we're doing to this, and then that's just taking more charge of it rather than just mindlessness.
Yeah. Well, man, I really appreciate you taking the time, Corey, to
absolutely
here to talk with me to help our church and others in our community who are engaging with us. Leslie, thanks for the comment, about the be here now. I think that's great. It's great to have language that you can put with something, be able to just be here now, and it means something, and everybody gets it.
So let's add a couple of practical things before we hang up, though.
Okay.
Because I think one of the things would be, I would challenge, just like you're talking about, have a technology break is what you're encouraging, and use that for prayer or study or just being together with people that you enjoy. What if you, as a family, adopt a no technology at the table rule, right? And that means even if the phone rings, you don't answer it, right? There's voicemail still exists. It works, actually, surprisingly. But it's just, okay, this is just one of those things that I can model. No, we're here. We're going to have fun. You guys one of our favorite things, right, when we came back to visit several years ago, and you had the jar of questions,
right,
to ask at the dinner table. We still have that and regularly pull that thing out during meal times, just because it's fun conversations of being here and having fun just together. And so I think just do some things like that. There's even, I don't know if you guys have talked about the phone stack if you're out with friends.
Yeah, that's come up, and we watched the movie Screenagers. Several of us, we had a showing of the movie Screenagers, and that was one of the things in there.
Perfect.
A couple weeks ago, or last week, 2 weeks ago, on this our first broadcast,
right?
Larry Boone mentioned that, and so that's a great idea.
Yeah, but it's just, I think, do that, and then also, I would encourage this as couples. When you're talking about the fear of missing out, how do I claim more time for my relationship? And some of that is I turn off technology at a set time to have time together as a spouse, where we have a regular, this is when we're shooting to go to bed, so the TV's off, screens are put away. Because they're actually, screen usage right before sleep makes sleep harder.
Right.
Because of the pixels and the way it hits your brain. So I can't even think of the way it energizes your brain. It turns it on rather than slows it down. So it's just do some things where it's like, no, we're going to just go together. We're doing a regular bedtime routine, and just claim some more time and see if that helps. See what kind of shifts there are.
Yeah, I think that's good. And the phone stack thing, just because there may be some people watching who don't know what that is. You go out together, you go out to dinner with friends or family, and everyone stacks their phone face down in the middle, and the first one to pick it up and check has to pay the bill.
Yep, and you leave all the dingers and notifications on. Turn them on really loud so you hear all the noises and sounds. Seriously, because that's what draws even more of a pull. It's like, oh, I got to check because I listened to it.
I leave mine off all the time, so it annoys people when they're like, "Hey, Allison especially. Hey, I've tried to call you like 4 times."
Yeah,
awesome.
Yeah, so, I turn it. I do too.
Anyway, so hey, Corey, thanks for those tips there at the end. We want to keep finding different ways to practice this, and we'll be talking more about this in the weeks ahead. But as we go, I do want to give you just a chance to talk briefly about Simple Marriage and Sexy Marriage Radio, because I know we have some people that I think I find it incredibly beneficial, and so just wanted to give you a chance to kind of tell us a little more about that.
Yeah, Simple Marriage is just a resource with over 1,000 different posts of articles over the last 8-9 years, as well as my book Naked Marriage is there. There's all kinds of resources, contents that are available. And the Sexy Marriage Radio, which you can find the easiest is sexymarriageradio.com. That'll steer you straight towards it. That is just a weekly podcast that right now my co-host, and for the future my co-host, is my wife Pam. But we're 6.5 years into this. So today's episode, since this is a Wednesday, was episode 338.
Wow.
And it's basically straight talk that's honest and no holds barred, no candy coating about married sex, because there's not enough good information about it that has a biblical worldview, even though it's not blatant, spiritual. It is spiritual. And we just try to provide really good information and talk about things that really do help couples. And so there's weekly shows. Sexy Marriage Radio 3.0 is shortly coming as far as a transition. And there'll be more video content. The Sexy Marriage Radio Getaway happens in June. So if anybody hears this and is interested, they're welcome to come spend 4 days with us out by the DFW airport. You can find info at simplemarriage.net on that. And we're just going to keep going, because I think marriage is too important and sex is too big of a deal to not get all that God intended out of it. So,
yeah. And I think just through what you're doing there, that's combating FOMO.
I hope so. I hope so.
Anyway, but so thank you for your time, and everyone else that's out there. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. If you're watching this later, thanks for checking in, and please feel free to add more comments. We'll interact with you. But one thing I do want to remind you is that we are doing this fast, 24 hours off of social media. We're going to do that. I'm going to do that tomorrow. We're doing that here in our office tomorrow. And so we want to invite you, if you haven't done that already this week, to do that. And instead, we're going to focus on prayer and gratitude. But as always, we want to let technology be in its proper place rather than it driving our lives. And so let's keep working together to find ways to do that. Thanks for joining us today, Corey. Thanks a lot. And we'll see you guys next time.